Welcome CSE 121, W1 to EX3, name age input. And we're going to work with the input function and we're going to input some data, do a little bit of math just to find out an age, real basic stuff, and we'll also use an if-else statement just to get into it a little bit more and make it a little more interesting, and also to examine some Python issues that we'll face as we start to program with Python. So what I'm going to do first is go into my CSE 121 folder and create a new repel. So I'll go up to create and I'll make sure it's the Python template, and I'll call it 3- and we'll call it name age input, and I'll put my initials RH, and I instructed you to put your initials because that way if I fork your assignment it'll be easier. So we'll start off with that. Let me make sure I have name spelled right, and I'll create my repel. And I'm going to move this over just a little bit so I see things a little bit better in the console. Now what we're going to do first, just real basic stuff, is create some variables and get some data into them. So the variable is going to take an input value. So we're going to do something like this. We'll do some real basic first. Name. So we'll put name equals, and last time we just put a string here, but this time we're going to use something called input, and we'll put parentheses, and then we could put a little prompt in here, and we'll put enter name. That's simple enough. And we'll put a colon and a space, and we'll highlight this and make sure it's a string. And I like to put the space in there so the prompt has a little space after it. So we're going to enter name. That's going to be the first input that someone's going to put in there. So there's going to be a prompt here, and they're going to have to put it in. And we're going to figure out someone's age. And we're going to do it by subtracting the current year by their birth year. Now, of course, that creates an issue because if they already had their birthday in January or something, right now it's January. Let's say they had their birthday, they'd already be that age. But if they didn't, the age would be older than they turned yet because it's early in the year and they haven't had their birthday yet. So we'll deal with that. So we'll kind of just say you will turn something in that year, and then we'll use an if-else to address if they had their birthday or not. Now, there is a date object that you can work with to figure out what the date is and if they did have their birthday, and they could enter that. But right now, we're just going to ask some questions and get used to the input. And one thing to point out about input is it'll always come out as a string. So if we have to do math, we're going to have to do some conversions. So let me close this up over here. I don't think we need the file, so I'll kind of move this over here so we can have our output right here. And we're going to start off with that. And then we're going to do something called current year, and I'll spell it out. Normally you want to use a shorter variable like CY or something, but so you understand what I'm doing here, I'll do current year with an underscore. And again, that'll be assigned to input, parentheses, and we'll just put enter current year. That makes sense. Put a colon, space, and then I'll highlight all of that and put it in quotes so it's a string. And I'll fix my end there. And then I'll put birth year. Same thing, input, and I could even highlight and copy this, copy it, paste it, and enter year you were born. That might be easier instead of birth year. And I'll get rid of this, and I'll stretch this out so it's all on one line for what we're doing. Get rid of the space there, so the prompt will be there. So we're going to ask them their name, current year and birth year, and then we're going to output what their age is going to be in the current year. So I'm going to put a print statement, and if you want to put an output here just to kind of separate it in your code, it won't separate it over here, but it'll separate in your code. You could do that. We'll put a print function, and in here, what are we going to do? And we could do this with an F string. So we're going to put name, and we'll use those curly braces, and we'll just put name, and then we'll put you will turn, and we'll put age, and we'll put in current year. Now we're putting all our variables in there first. Now let me get rid of this extra curly brace here, and I'm missing one here. And this whole thing should be a string. If we use an F string format from the previous video, we'll highlight this and we'll put this all in quotes. And that way it'll say name, Rich, or whoever you are, you will turn this age in current year, which would be the year they enter, which would be 2023. Now remember, everything's just a string right now, so you have to put an F here. So let's put an F, and that way the variables are showing up in white. Now we're seeing red here. Why are we seeing red? Even before you look at it, why are you seeing red? We have a variable here, age. Where is that? Where is it assigned or declared? Nowhere. We don't have it anywhere. So we didn't do the math yet. So we have to do the math here. So let's go below here and let's do the math. And let's say age as a variable will equal current year minus birth year. That makes sense. I'll start typing it, and you could click right on current year, and then I'll put minus, and I'll start typing birth year, and that comes up. And that way age should be the current year minus birth year. Now, what do you think is going to happen? Well, let's see. There's the prompt to enter name, Rich. Enter current year. It's 2023. Enter year you were born. I gotta fix that. Enter year you were born. Enter year you were born. Okay, we'll fix that. But anyway, I was born in 1967. And then I'll hit enter. And I get an error. Now let's look at the error. It's a type error. So it's a runtime error. So it ran through some of the code, but then it got to somewhere that it didn't really understand something. And the type error, we talked about this before, we're trying to subtract two strings because these inputs actually return the variable as a string, and we can't subtract strings. They're words. You can't subtract words. They have to be numbers. Even though they represent numbers, it's the same thing as if it was, I'll just put it here, it's the same thing as 2023 minus 1967. That's actually what it's trying to do, and you can't do that. So we're not going to do that. So we have to convert these into integers. And you can do them up here. You can wrap int around this whole statement, or you can do int around these. Now I can do int current year, and I'll put a parentheses around each one, and I'll do int, and I'll do a parentheses around this one. So I'll convert this to an integer and subtract, and convert this to an integer. And that should give me an integer here. Now, the f string is not going to care that that's an integer. It's just going to put in the int. It'll just put the value in there. So let's see what happens. Okay, Rich, 2023. I was born in 1967. And it says, Rich, you will turn 56 in 2023. That is correct. Now, if I wanted a period in here, I could put it here. And one more thing you might look at, you might say, well, you know, you have int parentheses, int parentheses. Wouldn't it be simpler to just do this and just put int and wrap it around both of them? Now, what do you think is going to happen? Think about it. Let's try it out. It's always good to make mistakes because that's how you learn what works, what doesn't. So, Rich, 2023, 1967, and we get an error because they're still strings. And the problem is we're still subtracting a string from a string and then converting it to an integer. But when we do this, we're converting each one to an integer first before we're doing any subtraction. So this is converted to an integer, this is converted to an integer, and they're being subtracted, and they're coming up with a value because they can now do math because they're ints. And let's run it one more time, make sure it works okay. And that works okay. Now let's do something else just to make this a little more interesting because this is kind of boring. Let's say we want to have something where someone just enters the year they were born and you could tell them what their age is. We'll just do something like that. And we already have name, and we don't even have to use name. We could just say you are this. And we have current year because they're going to enter it up here. We'll do it within the same program that we're working on here. But what I'll do is I'll just put a space here, and I'll put a comment, and I'll just put some dashes just to separate it. And I'll go below here. Now, what you can also do, sometimes I'll put like a print statement and just put a \n, make sure they're strings. And that way we'll have some separation between the next one. So we'll put that there. And then even if you want to copy this, just to make the code look nice, we can do this. and that way we'll have some separation. We have current year, and we have their name if we're going to use it. We'll repeat this. We'll do it again. Now, remember, if you have another variable and it gets reassigned, it's going to be the newest one. So we could use this here. So let me do this. We're going to start it off by saying, enter the year you were born. And they're going to enter the year you were born, and then you'll determine what their age is. Now, something else you can ask them is, did you have a birthday yet? Okay, so we're going to do something called BD_yet. For the sake of nothing better, BD yet. And then we'll do an input, and I'll just copy this one. And it could be a string. We're not going to put any numbers here. And we'll ask a question. We'll say, did you have a birthday this year? And we'll put yes or no. I'll stretch that out a little bit. So hopefully they could prompt putting yes or no. Now, in this situation, if they don't put yes or no, it's going to mess things up. But for now, we'll kind of hope that they put in the right thing. And I'll even put a space here so we have a little separation. So we're getting a value of yes or no. Now, what are we going to do with that? Well, if they didn't have a birthday yet, we're going to subtract this so that it's not 2023. We're going to make the value smaller because I'm 55. So I'd want to say that I'm 55, but we will have to subtract something from that. So we're going to do something called a conditional statement, an if-else, and I'll go to Python up here, W3 Schools, great place to go for resources, and I'll go down to if-else. We're going to use an if-else. And it's a conditional statement, meaning if the variable is something, something's going to happen, and if the variable is something else is going to happen. And I just want to show you a simple version of this, if they have a simple one here. We're going to use this one here, and you can see the way it works. It's if, and then there's a condition with a colon, and then something, and we're going to just declare a variable. And then there's elif. Now we're not going to use elif, we're just going to have else, because there's only two choices. So there's either yes or no. So we're just going to have if and else. So else doesn't have a condition, because if it's not the first one, it's going to be the second. And let me just do it, because it'll be easier just to show you here. So we're going to do a little if-else statement. So we're going to put if, and then the condition is if BD yet is equivalent, and we can't use equals, we have to use equals, and we'll talk more about this because we're kind of jumping ahead a little bit. But if BD yet equals no, or is equivalent to no, and I'll put it in a string like that, and we have to put a colon here. That's the way we end the first line of a conditional statement. So it's going to be if, and then here's our condition. If BD yet is equivalent to no. So if they answer no, that means I didn't have a birthday yet. And it's January, so most people didn't. Then, we don't have to put then in here. We just have to put something in the indent. So what we're going to do is we're going to put current year, which we already have from entering it up here, because we'll still do this part. So current year equals current year minus 1. Make sure that's a C. And then we go back out to the margin, and I'll put else. Now we don't need a condition for else, because it's going to be yes, so we don't have to put anything else. If it's not no, it's going to be yes. So else is going to be yes. And then we'll just say current year, I'll click on it here, equals, I'll just put current year. I think we could just put current year, but I'll just put equals current year, like that. So it just stays itself, is what's happening there. So then we're going to have another print statement, and I'll copy this print statement up here, just so I don't have to redo it. And I'll put, well, it didn't really help. I'll just put you are, and in curly braces, I'll put age. And I'll make it all a string, highlight it, quotes, put the F in front so that it reads the variable, and it should say you are, and it should be 55. Actually, it shouldn't be. What didn't we do yet? We still have to get age. We still don't have the age variable yet. Now, the reason it's not showing an error, because we have age up here. Now, we're making a new age. So we're going to do this thing again. So we're going to go age. Let's copy that one and bring it down, because we still have to do age again. Let me bring that down and let me move it away from the conditional statement. So we still have to figure out age. We're still going to do current year, and it's going to use this current year, and we have them int, and it's minus that. So we're still going to do that. So this current year should be one less, right? Well, let's see. Let's see what happens here. So again, we're doing the same thing. We're just throwing this in here, and let's see what happens. I'm going to enter my name. Now this is the first one, so we're just doing this one again. And the year you were born, 1967. And it says you will turn 56 in 2023. So now here's our new one. It says enter year you were born, 1967. Did you have a birthday this year? No, I did not. It's January. My birthday is in November. I'll put N, and it doesn't matter if it's upper or lowercase in this case. And we get an error. Now, I thought we took care of this stuff. Int. Do you see the problem? What line is it? 15. It's this line. What's happening on this line that's a problem? We're taking a string and we're subtracting it by 1. We can't do that. So we have to make sure that this is int current year minus 1. And we'll leave this current year as an int as well, just in case it uses this one. So in case it's yes, it'll use that. But this should create it. Well, either way, we still have to do math here. So this will do the math here, and it'll subtract it. 2023, it'll make it 2022, and then it'll be 2022 minus 1967, or whatever your birthday is, and come up with the right date. So again, whenever we're doing math, we have to make sure that they're integers, and we didn't convert it yet. Now we did here when we did that, but we're still taking the original current year and bringing it down here. That's why it's not converted. So it was converted kind of in here temporarily to do that math, but it's the original variable is this one here. So that was never converted completely. The only way to convert it would be make current year and then equals int current year. You could do something like this. Let me just show you. We could have done this. Current year equals int current year. And that'll reassign current year as an int. So we could have done that, and then wherever it goes, we wouldn't even have needed it here. But we didn't, so we're doing it again. But that's one thing you can do. So we'll get to all that stuff, but we're doing it down here. As long as we're doing it somewhere where we need it, and if you draw an error, that's okay, because then you'll know that you need this to be an int, and we'll make these int. And you could try different things. You keep trying to make it fail. Now let's see what happens here. We'll try it one more time. And put name, current year, year born, and that works because it already worked. And enter year you were born, 1967. And did you have a birthday this year? No. You are 55. And it works. So that's good. And you could even try it the other way. Make sure it works the other way. Enter a name. Try all different versions here. Now this one we're just running through. Year you were born, 1967. Do you have a birthday? Let's say it was the end of the year. Let's say we're doing this in December of 23. And I already did turn 56. We'll just pretend. So I'll put yes. And let's see what happens. You're 56. So it works. So you always want to try it both ways, just to make sure both of them work. So that's all you have to do for this exercise. We're going to be doing more with inputs. We're going to be doing more with math. Lots of neat stuff with math. And, conversions, all this kind of stuff. But for now, that's good for EX3. We're just taking a little bit of a step further, even doing a little introduction of an if-else, which is fairly simple. What we're doing here, we only have two options. It's either one or the other. And we're gaining a value that we're actually using. So that's a condition. So if the condition is making a variable one way and making a variable another way. So the variable's less when you didn't have a birthday, and the variable's more when you did have a birthday. So that's all you have to do here. when you're done, you could just copy this. And again, I'm not going to record it every time going back to my Warren, but go back to my Warren for assignment 3, exercise 3, name, age, input. It may be under unit 2. And you're just going to go to your coursework. You're going to go to add comment, and you're going to insert it as a link and make sure it opens in a new window, and that's it. And that'll be EX3, name, age, input.